Hi everybody, we got a bunch of stuff going on this week to celebrate the bottling of a new batch of wine. Stick around. Now my family's been making wine for 4 generations. In fact, my great-grandfather opened up a bar in the working class neighborhood of Detroit back in the late 1800s. While he was making wine, he was also selling liquor. And during Prohibition, my grandmother actually bootlegged whiskey from Canada across the Detroit River, so a colorful family history here. But this particular family tradition of winemaking holds on, and my latest batch of Pinot Grigio is now ready for bottling. And so after the fermentation was done and the wine actually cleared, it was time to get it into sanitized bottles. And this is easy to do with the siphon method. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about making the wine here, just that it's another hobby that I really enjoy, and I have to keep the family tradition going. So now that the bottles are full, it's time to sanitize the corks and get those in the bottles, and then we can move on back to the wood shop. So I was playing around with a couple of ideas for a tabletop wine rack, and I really like the Motor City flame style that you're going to see on cars and motorcycles. So I tried to mimic that with a freehand drawing, making sure that my curved openings were big enough to accept the width of a bottle. And I redrew this a few times, erasing it and trying to smooth out the lines. And you can do the same thing. Again, just play with it. At most, I used a compass to help me make sure that my drawn radiuses were smooth. And now with this first cutout, I'll use this as the template to draw out 2 more pieces and then cut those both on the bandsaw. Now they're not going to be perfectly aligned. We'll have to sand them after gluing, but that's okay. And because this is 2x8 dimensional lumber, that gives me a total thickness of 4.5 inches. Plenty to be able to hold a bottle. And after it dries overnight, we'll get this on the spindle sander, which does a great job helping to smooth out the inside curves of this wine rack. Now, I also don't show it on camera here, but there was quite a bit of hand sanding, and I wound up finishing with 220 grit paper to get it nice and smooth. And then I wound up using Danish oil to finish the pine, and also a block of ipe that I used as a base. And you could use pine again for the base of this wine rack as well. I just happen to have some of this exotic hardwood available in stock.
Wow, it's very nice.
And so now moving on to the bottle stoppers, I had a bunch of small pieces of this exotic hardwood sitting in one of my bins, and I thought I'd get creative with a couple of pieces, including this Paduke with some holes drilled around the perimeter and some white dowels punched all the way through here. So stacking these pieces together, I wound up having Purple Heart, Paduke, Babinga, and this striped mix with maple. And I thought I'd give these a try for different designs of bottle stoppers that I could use on the wine bottles. And I had all kinds of trouble along the way. And so while I was trying to finish the entire spindle, it broke apart on me. I also had a belt fail, and I had to order a new belt for the actual lathe. But even after it broke apart, I was able to work on the pieces individually. In fact, this red piece of Paduke is going to break off here in a second too. But I was far enough along that I could finish the pieces by hand. And this is the Babinga that I'm carving out a nice little curved line in the middle of the stopper. And here's the red Paduke that broke off. But I can just cut them off flush and then get them over to the sander to finish. No biggie. So you have to be really careful when working with a belt sander like this, because it'll take your skin off in an instant. And I say this from experience and the usage of many Band-Aids. But I did need to grind down a couple of these stoppers before I went to hand sanding. I also found this cool stainless steel set of teardrop bottle stoppers, and they're specifically designed to be used with wood projects like this. They just need to be epoxied in place. So this was pretty easy to drill the hole, get the epoxy inside, and get them screwed in to complete each one of the stoppers. And they look great too. And here's the Bidouque with the maple dowels drilled through. They look a little dull, but they're going to need some spray finish. So I wound up using gloss lacquer on these, and it took 4 coats to really bring out the shine. And now that the wood projects were done, I had the wine bottles set to go. I decided to take a picture from my backyard, and this is a stream that runs in the back, to maybe take a section from that photo, add a couple of effects like a watercolor blurred effect, and I wanted to lighten up the label a little bit too, and I thought this would be a great background for a wine label. And so once I got this set, I brought it over to a word processing piece of software, added the text, and duplicated the label so that I could print them. And it's just regular printer paper at this point, nothing fancy. But because there's no adhesive, I wound up using spray glue on the back of these labels, which works out really great on these glass wine bottles. And I've done this for other vintages too, and they last really well. The hardest part is centering the label, but it looks pretty cool when it's done. So I really had fun with these little projects. I think that tabletop wine rack looks good in the corner of our dining room with our other wines, but it'll fit on a countertop too. And the bottle stoppers are fantastic. In fact, I'm thinking of making more for gifts.